it can't be everybody on the earth, right? This is a regular King James Bible right here. It can't be everybody on the earth. So who would God's chosen people be? Let's read that from the top one more time, right?
God, the book of Deuteronomy chapter 7 and verse number 6. For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God.
You know what holy means? Holy means set apart or separate, meaning they're not like anybody else, right? Keep going.
The Lord thy God has chosen thee to be a special people.
To be a what?
To be a special people.
When we think about this word special, we think talented, smart, drives culture, drives heritage, knows how to cook, knows how to be cleanly. You know, they said there was a certain people that taught Europeans how to be clean, right? To escape, what do they call it? The what kind of plague was that? Not bubonic plague, was it?
Black plague.
The Black Plague, right? Then also we had certain nation of people that created the stop sign, a certain nation of people that created the car, the air conditioner. That's special, right? Know how to sing and dance and cook. That drives the culture, right? So God said he had a special people that were unlike anybody else. But this is how we find out who God's chosen people are. And it's bittersweet, right? Deuteronomy 28:15. Oh, read Romans 11:1 real quick.
Hey, I got a precept. This is Romans 11:1, and it says, I say then, had God cast away his people.
So New Testament is telling you, because a lot of times they like to say that God don't have a chosen people no more. Everybody's chosen. But the New Testament is telling us what? Read from the top.
I say then, had God cast away his people.
What did God say?
God forbid.
He didn't cast away his people. So who are they? Right? Read this real quick. This is how we find out who God's chosen people are.
The book of Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 15.
Right?
But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God.
So God's talking to his chosen people. He said, if you don't listen to me, keep going.
To observe and to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses.
That all these what?
That all these curses.
Have you guys heard of a generational curse before? I'm sure you guys have certain nationalities in mind that have generational curses put on them. Right? We all live in the world, whether you're over here in America or in Europe or in Asia or Ukraine, there's a generational curse on a certain group of people, right? God said, if you don't listen to me, I'm gonna put a curse on you, right? Keep going.
That all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
Right? Go to verse 46.
Verse 46. And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder.
So that's why I said it's bittersweet, because these curses are gonna be on these people to let people know, hey, this is a sign. These are God's chosen people. For a sign and for a what?
For a sign and for a wonder.
And so people can stop wondering, hey, look, who are these people? Where do they come from? Nobody teaches their history. Right? Keep going.
And upon thy seed forever.
For what?
Forever.
So these curses have been put on us, I'm not going to say us, on these people for a sign forever. Not just till Christ came back, not just the Old Testament, but forever it says, right? The first curse is this, read verse 16.
Verse 16, cursed shalt thou be in the city.
Who's cursed in the city? Last hired, first fired. Who fills up Section 8 housing? Who's in poverty? Everywhere you go to China, who's in poverty? You go to Ukraine, who's in poverty? You go to Europe, who's in poverty? Who's cursed in the city? Read the next one.
And cursed shalt thou be in the field.
Now, who's cursed in the sugarcane field, tobacco field, rice field, cotton field? Who was cursed in those places? Right? Go ahead.
Are you saying that?
I'm not saying anybody. I'm just reading who God is describing would be his chosen people. Right? Now read verse 49 right there.
The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far,
right? From
the end of the earth,
right?
As swift as the eagle flieth.
Now, there's a few nations that have had an eagle as their mascot. Egypt, there's an Egyptian eagle, right? There was a Roman eagle. There was a Greek eagle. There's an American eagle. So read that from the top.
The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the ends of the earth.
Right? So a nation would come against God's chosen people from far. Keep going.
As swift as the eagle flieth.
As swift as the eagle. Keep going.
A nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand.
They're going to speak a different language. Keep going.
A nation of fierce countenance.
Hey, look, they were fierce. They didn't care. They ruled with the sword. Keep going.
which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young.
Right. That's a curse too. Right? Now I want to read y'all 2 more curses before y'all leave. Right? The next curse, 54.
So that the man that is tender among you and very delicate,
Right?
his eye shall be evil toward his brother.
Right? So eye is evil toward his brother. Now we know that it goes on, but is it highlighted? Is white on white crime highlighted? Is Arab on Arab crime highlighted? But for some reason, in the news, in the media, they highlight black on black crime. God said these curses are going to be on his people for a sign and for a wonder. And it's going to be pushed throughout the earth, so the earth has no excuse but to see. Read verse 68. You can read verse. Oh yeah, keep reading that one.
And towards the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall leave.
So it said another curse on his people was the man was going to leave the house. Now we see y'all look like a happy family, right? But the majority of God's chosen people, the man's going to leave the house. Papa was a rolling stone, right? Read verse 68. This is the last curse.
And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again.
Right? The Lord's going to bring his chosen people into Egypt again. This is important because God said once he freed them from Egypt, they wasn't going to go back to Egypt. So is God a liar? No, God ain't no liar. He said, read that again from the top.
And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again.
Right? So God's not a liar. So what does he mean by this? When you read the Bible, you got to kind of piece it together like a puzzle. It says here a little, there a little, and that's how we get understanding. So the meaning or spiritual meaning of Egypt is something, let's find it out. Not from us, but from the Bible, right?
This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 5, and verse number 6.
Right?
And it reads, I am the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage.
From the what?
From the house of bondage.
So when you see Egypt, a lot of times in the Bible, it's synonymous with bondage. So that's why you'll see him refer to Babylon as Egypt. He'll refer to Assyria as Egypt because that's where his chosen people were held in bondage. So he said he was going to send his chosen people into bondage again. But how is he going to send them into bondage? Keep going.
And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships.
With what?
With ships.
With what?
With ships.
So his chosen people would go into bondage on ships. Now we're at the trivia part. We read all these curses. Who must God's chosen people be? Who do we know has been into bondage on ships? Who do we know don't have fathers at home? Who do we know that was cursed in the city? Who do we know that was cursed in the field? What nation of people comes to mind? What nation of people don't get taught their history, but they get taught about the Ming Dynasty? They get taught about the Trojan horse. They get taught about the Great Wall of China.
The Odyssey, the Iliad.
They get taught about George Washington, but they don't get taught about their foremothers and their forefathers.
They chose to, you know what I'm saying? We're supposed to have more of a giving understanding to everything, but we don't do that. You know, we all focus on everything to self. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think that's the correct way to go. You know, I study with my sister and they're Jehovah's Witnesses, and they believe that it's a unison, not just one separate. You know, we all have a chance to gain what they call everlasting life. That's true. We don't need to go to heaven either. But we're in heaven right now. It's just going to be brought back to the state where it's supposed to be original. You know what I'm saying? Right. And right now, we're going through a phase. This is part of a phase. Once we get past this phase, the chosen people, he chooses because we're not the ones that make the choice. Right. We're reading the scriptures. Right. We can't take it out of context.
Right.
Not to be just based on one set group of people.
Right.
Created all of us.
Right.
So if we overlook that and saying that we all came in bondage and we did this and did that, that's true. It's in the scriptures, but it's speaking of a base of people, not just one set of people.
Right. Check this out. I agree to. This is where I agree with you. We don't know who the elect may be. That's why we call ourselves the hopeful elect, right? But check this out. God did create everything on this earth. He also created the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but he said it was bad, right? God creates stuff on the earth, and he also gives them a purpose. In the book of Romans in the New Testament, he tells us what? Does the potter have power over the clay? Does he not have power to make one vessel unto honor and the other to dishonor? So what we're saying is, yes, he created everybody, but there are hierarchies in place. We see now God's chosen people who we just found out are at the bottom of society. And look at society now. We have transgenders, we have homosexuality, we have lawlessness because they're not at their place. You talked about a heaven being reinstated, right? That comes from a renewal of the mind. We always say to renew the mind is to go back to your old mind. It's not a new mind, it's a renewing of the mind. As we say in the Lord's Prayer, right? Your kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Meaning we believe like you. We don't think we're going to some mystical place called heaven. He's coming to us, right? But he's going to reinstate that, what you said, bring heaven back to where it's supposed to be, that hierarchy, right? So when we're talking about the kingdom, in the book of Revelation, it talks about 12 gates into the kingdom. Those 12 tribes of Israel. Those 12 tribes of Israel, not just blacks, right? It's a multitude of nations, blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans of all different colors and shades, right? You mentioned white people. We don't really, talk about white people. There's multiple different nations out there. But what they did was divide and conquer. Now, one thing about the white people will say is, when he said we were sold into our enemies, we understand who we were sold to. Now, they have their place too, right? We know the vessels are made to honor and one to dishonor, but there are gates for God's chosen people, and then there's an outer court left to the Gentiles mentioned in Revelation chapter 11 and verse 2. So there's a place for other nations, and there's a place for nations. For example, you have you have United Kingdom, the Buckingham Palace. Can anybody go into the Buckingham Palace? No, but everybody's a part of the what? United Kingdom that lives in the UK. And that's kind of how the kingdom of heaven is going to be set up. That's the importance of knowing who we are so that we can start changing society.
Coming off soon, of course, all the hierarchies, they got the idea from somewhere, and it came from God. I mean, if you think about it, there's a whole generation of angels and stuff that follow a certain direction.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So if all that was put into place, of course, we humans are going to follow behind it. You just miss what you do. That's why man here, you a man.
So like,
Right.
can I say something real quick? And I don't, and I like it, like the brother said. Yeah, the Most High, we not sitting up here saying that, we choose we determine who God chose people are. The reason for reading the Bible scriptures is to show you that the Most High made that decision, and he put curses on them for a specific reason to identify them in the times where it would be said that, hey, have my people been cast away, right? But I want to read you something out the Bible. This is the book of Luke, chapter 12 and verse 51, and I want to read you two things. This is Luke 12 and 51, right? These are the words of Christ, and it says, suppose ye that I am come to give peace on earth, right? Many people think that Christ has come to give peace, but that's not true, right? He says, I tell you, nay, but rather division, right? Christ is coming to bring division. He got to separate the sheep from the goats, right? Like it says in Matthew chapter 25. The reason I read that is why? Because other thing you said, we all human, we all God's people. Yes, we all are God's creation, but in the Bible, this is the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 6, and I'm gonna start at verse number 57. Matter of fact, I'm gonna start at 2nd Ezra chapter 6. I'm gonna start at 2nd Ezra chapter 6 and start at verse number 54. And it says, and after these, Adam also, whom thou madest Lord of all thy creatures, of him come we all, right? So we all come from Adam, but it says this right here, and the people also whom thou hast chosen, right? So the Most High said in his word, right? This is Ezra, this is the book of 2nd Ezra, and it said, we all come from Adam, but also the people who he chose come from Adam, showing you that there's a difference between his chosen and all his creation. He created everything on heaven and earth and it dwells therein, but he also chose a specific group of people to serve as his chosen people.
And so basically what we're trying to say is we're out here to help fulfill prophecy, right? You know what prophecy is, but prophecy was that we will remember ourselves in the place that we were sold captive. And once we do that, that's a part of God starting to act back on the earth, right? Read this real quick.
The book of Hosea chapter 1 and verse number 10. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea.
So it's a lot of us. It's not just blacks, like I said earlier, right? I'm not just, being, colorist, right? It's a lot of us. But what they did was divide and conquer. Now, we went over them curses. That poverty, that curse in the field and stuff like that, that happened to Mexicans. That happened to a lot of people in Brazil. That happened to a lot of people all over the earth, right? And we've been scattered all over the earth. But keep reading.
Which cannot be numbered nor measured. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people.
Right? When people want to say everybody's God's people, you're not God's people by yourself. What did God say prophetically was going to happen?
There it should be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living God.
So that's kind of why we're out here, is to let our people know, hey, look, we have to start acting the part if we want things to change. If we want God to hear us and act on our behalf and hear our prayers.
You have to get those earnest prayers.
Right. And I want to read to you something else too, right? In that same chapter that I was just reading out of, 2nd Esdras chapter 6. I'm going to jump down to verse number, I'm going to keep reading through 55 and 56. And it says, all this have I spoken before thee, O Lord, because thou madest the world for our sakes, right? He made a world for a certain group of people. And it says, verse 56, as for the other people, which also come of Adam, thou hast said that they are nothing but be like unto spittle, and has likened the abundance of them unto a drop that falleth from a vessel, right? So this is showing you that the Lord, he likened the abundance of his people who he didn't choose like unto spit, and that's not, like we said, that's not us saying this, that's thus saith the Lord. So when it comes to knowing whose God chosen people are, it's important to know that his chosen people are still around to this day. It can't be everybody, because when you go into the law, you go to Genesis chapter 17, when the Most High made a covenant with Abraham, there were other families that were dwelling on the earth. But he said Abraham, and what does it say in Galatians? In Isaac, or Romans 9, in Isaac shall thy seed be called, right? So when he made a covenant with Isaac, when he made a covenant with Jacob, there was other families on the earth. But guess what he said in Romans chapter 9? Who are Israelites, to whom pertaineth the adoption and the glory and the covenants and the giving of the law and the service of God and the promises, right?
So a lot of people have that Unitarian doctrine, like you were saying, with like Jehovah's Witnesses. The thing about it is, the Unitarian doctrine came from Catholicism. And from Catholicism, because Catholic just means universal. So from that's where we get all these different religions. They kind of just did their own spin-off. You have Mormons, Jehovah's Witness, Baptist, Pentecostal, you have Seventh-day Adventists. All of them kind of spin off of the Roman Catholic religion. But what we're saying is, read the Bible, right? Because the Bible's going to give us all the answers we need. A lot of times we're trying to look for God's voice and God's word and his answers, but he put them in there, and once we read that, it's a clear understanding. Now, the only hard part is getting over how we feel it should be instead of actually reading what it actually is.
It's a lot that y'all done said. And I agree with you. You know what I'm saying? But you gotta be honest with you. You gotta look a little bit more in depth. You know what I'm saying? Quoting scriptures, quoting words. People been doing this for ages and years.
Yeah, for sure.
But together they can understand it's called acronym. You know what I'm saying? I don't quote scriptures like that. I'm not even gonna tell a lot to say that I'm bashing like that.
Oh, you don't gotta be.
But I do gather an understanding about what I'm looking at.
Right.
You know, the reason why I even started studying with the witnesses again, bro, was because I came to the realization that a lot of them just talk. I've been understood, but those people do extensive research, bro. Their religion just didn't come to be just because somebody wanted to make a religion. They sat down and said, okay, this is what it's saying, this is what we're going to abide by. This is what we're going to follow. Now, I'm not going to go back and forth with you about right, wrong, this, that, and the other. I'm just going to say, just think about what you're reading, think about what you're saying, do the extensive research. Right. So then when you get ready to open your mouth and you speak to people like this, make sure you tell them the right way.
Right. And I'll say this too, before you leave. I don't want you to think that we just came out here and just started spewing out this stuff, right?
I know you do.
Right? Because the first time somebody told me this, I pretty much almost cursed that man out. I'm coming from Christianity. I said, man, what? The Bible for everybody. I said, just for us? Oh, I tell he was bugging. It threw me back. I didn't really start reading for myself until a year after that. But that conversation sparked that. A year after that, that's when I kind of came into this knowledge. This brother was still living a wild life. This brother was still living a wild life. eventually they started coming in too. We started having in-depth studies like you were saying you having with the witnesses, right? And we was doing that for about 2 years before we stepped out here and then started giving out the word. But what I will say is we've talked to many of Jehovah's Witnesses, and what I will say is they do accept the Bible for what it is and what is written in there. But certain things that we read today, they won't even combat. They'll just walk away because they know it's in the Bible, but they don't address it. And we're not saying that they're not smart. We're not saying that they're not studied. But much like a lot of like the Mormon Seventh-day Adventists, they're studied too. But there's some things that don't agree with them, and they can't let it go after they read. And one thing that we do is we let our emotions go.
Is the Old Testament or New Testament?
Both.
Oh,
yeah.
I'll tell you why they probably do that, man. It sounds like it's a pit against people. You know what I'm saying? Like it's turning people against people, or one race is chosen, or you know what I'm saying? Because I mean, I listened to you and I heard what you. I understood, but a lot of them are older, and they're gonna think that you're talking about a black and white thing.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
And so that's the point. When you said white right there a minute ago, our whole conversation, did I ever say anything about the white man? Never. But that's where our mind goes. Why? Because of oppression. And so when we think about that, that lets us know the way that we think, and we have to question it.
Right.
If they're the first ones that come to mind, out of all the nations in the world, I've seen a bunch of Asians today, a bunch of Middle Easterns today, but the first people that come to mind when we talk about God's chosen people is white. So that's something we have to take into mind of who even started the Jehovah's Witnesses, and who started that teaching.
And that's true. That is true. I'm gonna say that first and foremost. But it's only to be taken with a grain of salt because they never promoted black and white. Over time,
Say,
you know what I'm saying?
Can I say
They
something right there?
with the time, but then as you can see, my bad.
No, you fine.
But as it progressed, because my grandmother, like, you know, that whole generation of people, they were in it. And the women were having to preach at the time. You know, and the middle school where I'm from, there weren't any brothers down there. No black brothers, you know. They had a white sign, there was no black brothers. And they all got together instead of just going back and forth with each other. They preach about this all the time, man. It's not, you know it's not one set of people. There's going to be, we believe in the resurrection. You know, they were going to be brought back, you know, to a state of paradise on earth. All right. And also, of course, in the Bible, there's the resurrection of basically good and bad. You know, because when y'all were talking about Jesus and him teaching everybody, that's when that time is going to come. When it's time for him to basically come and this worldwide knowledge, man, it's going to be given to all of us who are there at that point in time. You see what I'm saying? The ones who are going to be destroyed is going to be the wicked ones, folks that want to worship the devil and follow behind him and all that retarded stuff. You know, that's basically, it's cut and dry just like that. That ain't, you know.
We agree with the same thing. So two principles that we teach, right? Well, one, you were saying how Jehovah's Witnesses, they never promoted black and white, right? Now, when you look at the early Jehovah's Witness church, even to today, a lot of the pamphlets that they give out and things of this nature, right? The images in there, right?
Everybody.
The angels is white, Jesus is white, and it goes against the Bible because the Bible says otherwise, right? So I will say they did promote a white image, whether we like it or not, right? And there's nothing we can do about that. You know what I'm saying? Another thing I will say with us, it's not so much a black and white thing. The Bible teaches us to be peaceable with all men, right? But with looking at anything like a family structure, right? In a family, you got a husband, you got a wife, you got kids. You have a head of that household, right? It's the same thing when you look at the structure of the earth. So it's not us saying that we're better than anybody else. It's not us saying that, hey, you guys gotta, you know what I'm saying, be subservient unto us. But it all goes back to structure, and the structure that the Most High God put for His worst for the world is that He chose a certain group of people to be a standard to bring that paradise for everyone, not just themselves.
In a classroom setting, what you have a teacher that teaches all the kids. So God set up the world kind of that way, right? But what I will say is also too, like that universal doctrine, right? Universal Catholicism. Of course, we want to be equal with them. We're not going to tell them that they're greater than us. We're not going to say that God is dealing with them. Everybody says, well, that's a spiritual group of people. That's so-and-so, so-and-so. Of course, we'll say that we're equal with them. As long as we're not below them, we can preach that, and it'll be accepted. But what we're preaching is we're saying word for word out the Bible. I'm not adding any of my thoughts or opinions to it. We're just reading word for word out of the Bible, and it's not creating a doctrine. But a lot of people's emotions can't take the fact that God is the potter, and He did make certain things for certain reasons.
What's up, man? I wasn't even paying no attention. No, sir. I was listening. No, sir. How y'all doing? All right. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so, you know, our whole thing was, because we were all in different religions, right? But our whole thing is, come out the religions, just read the Bible for what it say, right?
Yeah.
And when you read the Bible for what it say, then you just have to understand His ways are not my ways. I can't make sense of what He said. I just know what He said is what He said. So if He said, from the beginning, Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated, before they could do good or evil, a lot of us would say, wait. So you hated him for no reason? Then it goes on to say later on in the verse, is there unrighteousness with God? God forbid. He can do what He wants, right? So the whole thing is submission, and that's what we've done, is submit ourselves to the Bible, which has given us the confidence to come out here, right? And like I said, we talked to Jehovah's Witnesses, very scholarly people. We talked to all different religions, all different beliefs, and what we found is the word is true. He said His people will never be ashamed or confounded. We've never been confounded from nobody up here, because all we do, we don't say our own words. We just read what's in the Bible, and we say, hey, do you agree with this? No, I don't agree with that. God didn't say that. Let's read it one more time. Did God say that? No, God didn't say that. We say, look,
Well,
that's
I
the
mean,
Bible.
you can't help that, man. I mean, they're human beings. And
Right.
you understand that human beings we're soaked with emotion.
Right.
But the original creator of emotion is Jehovah God. So therefore, if He
Right.
created love and all that, and He also gets angry,
Right.
He's a living God. We all understand that.
Right.
You know, we're the ones who misconstrue.
Right.
Emotions is like a drug.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
We're on a roller coaster out here, bro. That's why everybody has an opinion. That's why everybody always got something to say.
Right.
They're so angry, you know, they want to fight all the, you know, because I can see y'all telling somebody something and they getting mad or whatever. It's because they can't control their emotions.
Right.
You can't help it, bro.
And can I read you something real quick? This is
What was your name again?
Jamel.
Jamel.
Austin.
That's me.
Yeah, my name is Foster, right? I want to read you this though, and it says, this is Romans 10:1, and it says, brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to God for Israel is that they might be saved. Verse 2, for I bear them record that they have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge, right? For they being ignorant of God's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of God, meaning that we feel a certain way. So instead of listening to the word, following what the word of the Lord says, we begin to establish our own standard of what righteousness is. And that's something that we can't do according to the words of our big brother Paul in Romans 10:1. Because then we begin to fall in sin, which is defined as the transgression of the law in 1 John 3:4. And we don't know Christ if we continue in sin. We can't know the Most High God if we continue in sin. And the only way we sin is by doing exactly what the world tells us to do. Oh, God created, you know, He created everything and all of His people are His chosen people. But that's not what it says in His word.
You gotta do what He asked me to do.
Right. And you gotta
stay that chosen.
Right. And you gotta and that's what our point come out here too.
Because if we
Right.
not knowing who we are, the media is influencing us.
Oh yeah, I'm good.
The media is influencing us to do all these things that are not our culture. Then guess what? We're gonna keep having that generational curse on us.
Right. That's exactly why He went over those curses, to show you that God gave His chosen people a standard to live by.
They can live exactly how I live, but God's gonna. I'm living check to check. My people oppressed. They're not.
And
Same thing with Asians, same thing with white, same thing with. But that's because God had a certain people, and if they're not, like you said, not doing what was required of them, they're gonna get punished for that.
right.
It says, to whom much is given, much is required,
And,
right?
for sure. And I'll leave it with this. Next time you talk to your sister and them, ask them about the Israelites, because most Jehovah's Witnesses I talk to, they understand that blacks are the Israelites, right?
Right.
And they'll agree with that, but they just want to preach, like I said, the universal doctrine thing.
Yeah.
But you know, just poke her mind about that. See what she thinks.
Right.
Bro, and you know, I'm not gonna forget the conversation.
Okay.
You nothing. Okay.
All right, brother.
Y'all, bro.
You
Take it easy,
we
brother
appreciate
Jamel.
you too.
You good. You cut it off.